They remembered her face, but never her name. At work, she was the one who sent the follow-up emails, the one who made sure coffee was full, copies were ready, and birthdays had cards. But when it came time to say thank you, they always looked at someone else. Her name was Sophie, not Susan, not Stacy, not what's-her-face from HR. Just Sophie, the kind of person you only notice when something goes wrong, because she was the one who usually fixed it. But no one ever asked what she wanted. No one ever wondered what she was holding back. At lunch, they'd talk around her. At tea. Meetings, they'd speak over her. Even the intern got more "good job" than she did. Still, Sophie smiled. Still, she stayed late. Still, she never said no, because that's what she thought being good looked like. Being quiet, being useful, being invisible. But invisibility has a price. And Sophie? She'd been paying. For years. Every small slight, every forgotten moment, every time someone took credit and smiled at her like she should be grateful, she took it and took it and took it until the day a man walked into gate 32 with half his face burned and asked if the seat next to her was taken. He didn't look like anyone else. He looked like war. People moved away. But Sophie? She moved her bag. And when he sat down, something shifted in the air. He didn't thank her. She didn't expect him to. But in that 5-second silence, he saw her. Really saw her, and that's where this story begins. Because one quiet girl's kindness is about to change everything. What would you do if you were no one, and kindness was your only voice? Keep watching, because in the next 3 minutes, Sophie will face a choice that most people wouldn't even notice, but it will change her life forever. Gate 32. The flight was delayed again. Sophie didn't mind. She had her book, her water, her silence. She liked airports. No one asked questions at airports. That day, the terminal buzzed with families heading to Disney, men in suits talking too loud. On Bluetooth, a child crying over a dropped lollipop. Sophie sat alone in seat 4B, near the gate. Next to the plug, first class, a gift from her boss, the only one she'd ever received, not out of appreciation, but because someone else canceled last minute. She was the backup, again. And that was fine. She didn't ask for more. Until he walked. And no one saw him at first. The crowd shifted, like wind against a field. People didn't move. They withdrew. A cleared circle formed around him, not by choice, by discomfort. He was tall, broad shoulders, wearing full uniform, but it was his face that made everyone pause. Burn scars covered most of it, shiny, uneven, pink against tan skin. One ear missing, one eye slightly lower than the other. He didn't flinch, didn't hide, just walked calmly, like he'd walked through worse. Sophie saw the airline attendant's forced smile, saw the toddler pointing, saw the mother hush the child too quickly, and then the seat next to her was offered, and then, they gave it to someone else. She saw everything, and he saw her see it. No words, just two strangers in a room full of people pretending not to see anything at all. Sophie stood, walked over. "Sir," she said. "Quiet, clear. You can take my, seat." She held out the boarding pass. Didn't blink. He looked at it, then looked at her. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was real, like both had finally met someone who wasn't performing. "You don't have to," he said. She smiled. "Once, I know." She grabbed her bag, took his seat, way back near the restrooms, didn't look back. He never asked her name. She didn't expect thanks. But that night in a hotel 2 cities away, she found a folded napkin in her carry-on. Neat handwriting. "You're the first person who didn't flinch. Not even for a second. That's rare. Thank you. Jay." She didn't cry, but she folded that napkin like a flag and tucked it into her book. The book with her name scratched on the front. Sophie. People still mispronounced it, but he got it right. even without saying it. If you've ever given something away without expecting applause, if you've ever chosen kindness when no one was watching, drop a comment below. Not for the likes, not for the views, but for the others like you, the quiet ones. This is Revenge with Smile and Sophie's. Story isn't even close to done. It had been 3 weeks. The coffee machine still didn't work. The intern still got Sophie's name wrong, and HR still hadn't replied about her overtime pay. Everything was exactly the same, which made it even stranger when the windows started, shaking at 2:14 p.m. on a perfectly normal Thursday. People looked up from their screens. The vibration wasn't loud, just deep, low enough to feel in your chest, like the kind of storm that comes without clouds. Sophie was at her desk. Not typing, not talking, just watching. The vibration turned into a sound, then into a roar, then into chaos. A military helicopter, full uniform, full insignia, landed directly in the courtyard of Hamilton and Cross Consulting Group. The entire office stood up. Phones came out. People leaned against windows, filming, whispering, guessing. Is it a drill? Is someone in trouble? Are we being audited by Homeland Security? Someone laughed. It sounded nervous. The blades slowed, dust settled. And then he stepped out. The same man from the airport, still walking like he'd learned the hard way, still scarred. Still impossible to look at, and impossible to look away from. He didn't look at the building. He didn't look at the crowd. He just scanned until he saw her through the glass. Third floor corner desk. He raised one hand, just one. And every phone dropped, every whisper stopped. Then he walked inside. Security didn't stop him. Reception didn't ask for ID. The elevator opened like it had been waiting for him. Sophie didn't move. Neither did anyone else. When the elevator dinged, everyone turned, but he didn't look at them. He walked straight to Sophie's desk, stopped, and said 4 words. I'm here for Sophie. Not louder than necessary. Not for show. Not for drama. Just true, and suddenly, just for a moment, the office forgot how to breathe. Her manager blinked. Sophie? He stammered. Sophie stood up, not confidently, not dramatically, just without hesitation. She didn't ask why he came. She didn't need to. Because when someone sees you, truly sees you, you don't need explanations. The man handed her something. Letter. Handwritten. Folded. Then he turned around, walked out, as quickly as he came. When the blades started again, no one looked away, except Sophie. She looked at the letter. Then quietly, without waiting, she walked to the break room, alone, some. People say kindness goes unnoticed. Others say it comes back in ways you never expect. Which do you believe? Drop your answer below. And if stories like this stir something in you, you might want to stick around. Subscribe, if you're not afraid of quiet truths. The next morning, her inbox was full. Not with client briefs, not with meeting invites, but with links, CNN, NBC, Time, even a morning show segment. The kindest woman in America. They'd found the airport footage, pieced together the puzzle overlaid. Her blurry silhouette with soft piano music and words like humility, selflessness, hope. The camera zoomed in on her face from a distance, back when she thought no one was watching. Because no one was. Not until now. By noon, the office had changed. The intern who never remembered her name now asked how to spell it, twice, just to be sure. The girl from marketing who once said Sophie's just background now left protein bars on her desk and told people they were friends. The manager who never made eye contact suddenly invited her to an exciting leadership opportunity. Unpaid, of course. People stopped laughing at her shoes. They started copying them. At first, Sophie didn't react. She smiled, soft, polite, the same way she always had. but something felt off. People didn't just see her now. They wanted something from her. An introduction. A quote, a piece of her kindness, to post about, to brand themselves by proximity. She was no longer invisible, but not quite seen either, not for who she was, just for what she'd become. A symbol, a shortcut, a PR moment. One. Afternoon. Her manager pulled her aside. "We're thinking of making you the face of our new campaign," he said, resting one hand on her shoulder. "Authenticity, quiet leadership, all that good stuff." She nodded, then asked one question. "Will I get a raise?" He laughed, not maliciously, just reflexively. "Let's not make it about money, Sophie. Of course not." By Friday, her desk had flowers, so many she couldn't see her screen. The card on the largest bouquet said, "From your work family. We're so proud." She didn't recognize the handwriting or the names, but there it was. Work family. She went home late that night, not because she had to, but because no one had asked her anything real all week, not how she felt, not what the letter said, not even what the soldier's name was. Just, "What's your skincare routine? Can we tag you in this? Do you want to meet our head of comms?" She opened the fridge, took out the same leftovers from Wednesday, sat on the couch, shoes still on, turned off her phone, turned on the letter. It didn't say much, just, "Thank you and you reminded me that I'm not scary." That was it. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in weeks, Sophie felt alone in a room full of applause. Not all spotlights are warm. Sometimes they burn. So tell me, would you still be kind? If it became currency? Drop a comment if you've ever felt used by praise, and stay for the next part, where Sophie's kindness meets its corporate match. They called it a celebration of kindness. Gold banners, branded cupcakes, a screen looping airport footage in silent repeat, and Sophie's name centered in every font they had. It was a party, but not for her. It was for them, the company, the image, the brand that now stood for quiet leadership. She wore black, not as protest, just because it felt honest. Her manager handed her a mic, then posed for pictures with his arms slung across her shoulders, like they'd been through a war together. "We're so proud to have a hero in our midst," he said. Hero? The word sat wrong in her mouth. She'd never fought anything. She'd just moved, instinctively. Kindly. There was no strategy, no mission, just a moment. But now, that moment was monetized. Midway through the event, they dimmed the lights. A video started. Soft piano. A narrator with the perfect voice. Meet Sophie. The woman who reminded us all that kindness still lives in corporate America. The footage replayed. The seat. The soldier. The slow zoom on Sophie's face. They even added text. Real employee, real impact. People clapped. Loud. Some even stood, but Sophie just watched, still, expressionless, until she noticed the footer at the end of the video. Brought to you by Bravance Corp. Powered by Purpose. Bravance. Her company. They'd copyrighted the story, trademarked her moment. After the video, her boss stepped up. "We believe stories like Sophie's are the future," he said, then launched into a 10-minute pitch about empathy and leadership. Company culture, brand trust. Sophie wasn't mentioned again. Not once. Back at her table, someone whispered, "You should totally do TEDx." Another said, "Do you mind signing this? My niece loves you." She smiled, gently, then stood, walked outside. No jacket, no phone, just silence. She sat on the curb, watched as a man from logistics lit a cigar 2 feet away, then pretended not to see her. It was familiar, comforting, in a strange way, because before all this, no one saw her either. And at least back, then, the invisibility was honest. Now, She was a product, a poster child, a pitch deck, and the kindness that once meant something. Now came with a QR code. She pulled the thank you card from her bag, the one the soldier gave her, read it again, then folded it back like it was made of glass. She looked up at the lit office windows. They were laughing inside. Toasts, photos. Another, story-driven initiative. A car drove by, slowed down, then stopped. It was a stranger. He rolled down the window. "You okay?" he asked. She paused, then said, "I'm just trying to remember if I meant it. Before they told me I did." He nodded, drove off. "And Sophie?" She walked away from the party, not because she was angry, but because she finally understood. Being seen isn't the same as being known. Most brands love stories, but not always the people behind them. If you've ever felt used by your own goodness, leave a comment. Tell us what they took and what you never gave them. Sophie deleted everything. Instagram, gone. LinkedIn, wiped clean. Twitter, dead. She didn't deactivate. She didn't post a goodbye. She just vanished. And for a while, no one noticed. No alerts. No missing person buzz. Not even a group chat ping, because quiet exits rarely echo. But silence? Silence holds weight, and Sophie knew how to wait. 12 days later, a Reddit post appeared. Anonymous. No photos, no names. Just a title. "Don't turn kindness into a brand." It wasn't angry or bitter. Just precise, pointed, the kind of post you don't scroll past even if you don't know why. It started simply, "Kindness doesn't wear lanyards. It doesn't smile for the press. It doesn't come with brand strategy." Then the line that split the internet in two. "I didn't save that seat for a camera. I saved it because my father died on a flight back from war and no one was there to offer him one." The post exploded. 100K upvotes in 2 hours. Trending. In 4 countries. Top of R true off my chest. Speculation ran wild. She's talking about Bravens Corp. Is this the girl from the airport video? Whoever wrote this is brutal and brilliant. People dug. Compared writing style. Analyzed sentence rhythm. Reddit turned into an amateur FBI unit. But Sophie, she watched quietly. From a borrowed laptop at a library without logging in. She saw the comments pile up. "She's right. I work in marketing. This is all too real." She's ungrateful. They made her famous. Good for her. Silence is a strategy. She sounds dangerous. She closed the tab. But not before reading one more. Some voices are louder in whispers. That one made her pause. Then smile. The backlash came next. Bravens issued a statement. Deeply saddened by false accusations. "We support kindness in all forms. No connection to anonymous posts." HR sent out a reminder on social media conduct. Her former manager deleted 3 LinkedIn posts featuring her name. And the celebration of kindness video? It was quietly taken offline, but the conversation didn't die. It shifted. Other users started sharing their own stories. A janitor who trained new hires but never got a raise. A nurse whose calm under pressure was never acknowledged until a patient tweeted about it. A teacher whose class project got turned into a PR campaign without her consent. Quiet people finally speaking. And Sophie? She kept watching. Not to be applauded, not to go viral, just to see what happened when the invisible finally got tired of being used as mirrors for other people's self-image. And maybe now's a good time to ask, have you ever been praised for something you didn't do for praise? Drop a comment, especially if you've ever felt your kindness was turned into currency. Because Sophie isn't alone, and you're not either. And in the next 3 minutes, she'll show us what happens when your silence becomes the loudest voice in the room. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday, heavy paper, real gold foil, the kind you don't throw away, even if it's junk. At the top, National Civil Honors Ceremony hosted by the Department of Veterans Affairs. Inside, a single line, bolded in recognition. of extraordinary acts of quiet valor by civilians. And below that, Sophie's name. The event was in D.C. red carpet, press coverage, senators, CEOs, the kind of room that made even confident people feel small. But Sophie didn't feel small anymore. She had her dress picked weeks in advance. Navy, simple, no sequins. Not because she wanted to disappear, but because she no longer had to sparkle to be seen. 3 days before the event, she got a call from a former coworker. "Hey, long time? I heard you're going to the VA Gala. So cool. Who else is invited from Brevance?" Sophie paused, looked out the window, then replied, "No one." The silence on the other end wasn't confusion. It was realization. Brevance, the company that used her story for every PR pitch, branding campaign, corporate keynote, wasn't even on the guest list. No plus ones, no executive sponsors. No room for opportunists, just Sophie and the soldier. At the event, she was seated near the front, right next to the general's wife, across from 2 astronauts. The air buzzed with soft applause and whispered names. The moment she stepped onto the carpet, cameras flashed, not in a frenzy but with intention. She didn't smile for every photo, didn't wave, didn't overperform. She was present, and that was enough. One photo, just one, went viral. Sophie, standing alone at the marble entrance, backlit by soft light, looking over her shoulder. Captioned, "Sometimes the seat you give up brings you here." Underneath, thousands of comments poured in. "Brevance isn't even in the building, lol." That's how you win, not with noise, but presence. Revenge doesn't always speak. Sometimes it just walks in without them. Sophie read them later, in her hotel room, barefoot with room service soup. She didn't repost, didn't quote tweet. She just whispered, "Let them wonder." But the press didn't let it rest. One journalist asked during cocktail hour, "Why wasn't your former employer here tonight?" Sophie took a sip, smiled. "Because they were never part of the moment, just the packaging." The answer was soft, but it landed like glass. And maybe now's a good time to ask, have you ever realized too late that the people who used your story were never part of it? Leave a comment. There's something people don't know about Sophie. They think the kindness was random, spontaneous, just one of those good citizen moments that happen when someone's feeling generous. But it wasn't. It was personal, deep, rooted in a wound she never talked about. Sophie's father was in the army. 5 years, 3 tours. He didn't talk much when he came home, but when he did, he made pancakes. Saturday mornings, blueberries if she was lucky. She never understood the silence, the long stares, the stiff shoulders, the sudden way he'd leave the room during fireworks. Until one day, she walked past his study and saw him crying. Not loud, not messy, just sitting there, holding an old photo with the edge worn smooth. She was 14. She never told anyone. 2 years later, he had a heart attack at a gas station. On the way to her high school debate finals, Sophie missed the call. Her phone had been on silent. By the time she got to the hospital, he was gone. The nurse said he kept asking, "Is she here yet?" Again and again. She wasn't. She never forgave herself. That's why she always answered her phone after that. Why she always said yes to favors. Why she always showed up early, stayed late, and never let anyone wait alone. Kindness wasn't a hobby. It was repair. So when she saw the soldier in Gate 32, the man with the melted face, standing alone, while people shifted away like he was contagious, she didn't think, didn't calculate. She stood up and gave him her seat. Not because he looked tired, not because she wanted attention, but because he reminded her of someone. When the press asked later, "Why did you do it?" she always gave polite answers. It just felt right. I figured he deserved the comfort. I didn't need it. But none of those were the truth. The truth was because I missed the last chance I had to show up. And sometimes you don't get to fix what's broken, but you get to build something that doesn't break the same way. The soldier never knew this. But when they sat together after the awards ceremony, he turned to her and said, "You looked at me like I wasn't broken." Sophie smiled. "You looked like someone who needed a chair, not a savior. And if you've ever carried a regret like that, one that softens your voice and hardens your resolve, you know what it means to see someone and choose to act. Not for them, but for the person you'll never get back. If this part of Sophie's story speaks to you, leave a comment. Not just to share yours, but maybe to forgive yourself for something you couldn't fix. That's what Sophie did. And now, she's not running from that moment anymore. She's building on it. And what she builds next? Well, keep watching. They called her America's Kindest Woman. There were headlines, segments on morning shows. A candle company made a limited edition scent in her name. It smelled like vanilla and valor. For a while, Sophie couldn't open her email without seeing interview requests, TV spots, invitations to galas. It felt surreal, but also wrong. Because what about the woman who gave up her seat on the train last week? Or the old man who volunteers at the children's hospital every Thursday? Or the teenager who eats lunch with the kid no one talks to? What about them? No camera, no headline, no trending hashtag. But kindness all the same. Sophie started noticing it more once the noise around her got loud. She saw the janitor at her new building picking up coffee cups people left on the floor. He never complained. He just smiled. She noticed the crossing guard who brought an extra umbrella for the kids who forgot theirs. She noticed the nurse who stayed late for a patient who had no one else. They didn't wear microphones. They didn't have a moment, but they mattered. The world only claps when the spotlight's on. But what about the dark corners, the small rooms, the quiet gestures no one sees? Are they worth less, or are they in some strange way worth more? Sophie sat once in a bookstore, watching people browse. No one recognized her. The headlines had faded. The candles had stopped selling. Her name no longer appeared in sponsored posts. She was just a woman with a book in her hand and a memory in her chest, and that was enough, because real kindness doesn't chase attention. It leaves no receipt. It's the kind of currency that only the soul can spend. And if you've ever wondered why people do good when no one's looking, here's the truth. They're not trying to be remembered. They're trying not to forget who they are. So maybe we're asking the wrong question. Maybe it's not. Will the world remember me? Maybe it's, did I remember the world when it needed me? And maybe that's the legacy that matters most. Not trending, not televised, but passed on in quiet hands, kind eyes, and small decisions that ripple in ways we'll never fully see. If you're still here, still listening, tell us, who's the kindest person you've ever met that no one else noticed? Drop their name below. Tell their story. Let them be remembered today. That's how Sophie would have wanted it. There's a bench outside the terminal at gate 32. It's not special, just wood and steel. People walk by it every day, checking flights, talking on the phone, spilling coffee. No plaque, no story. But for Sophie, it was sacred. She visited it once, a year. No camera crew. No press, just her, a black coat, and a single seat that changed everything. Not because it gave her fame, not because it brought her a spotlight, but because in that moment, she did something simple, something human. She saw someone and acted, not to be noticed, not to be praised, but because it was right. That's it. Years passed. People forgot. The soldier? He moved on, built a foundation for burn victims, refused interviews. About that airport day. Sophie. She taught ethics at a community college. No name tag, no title on the door. Just Professor Ellis. Her students liked her, said she listened more than she talked. She never mentioned the viral moment, never brought up the chair. But once, on a quiet Friday afternoon, a student stayed behind. He had that look, the kind of eyes that carried 100 things unsaid. He held a worn envelope. Inside it, a rejection letter from a scholarship. He looked at Sophie and whispered, "I'm not good enough. I never was." Sophie didn't argue. She just slid her own envelope across the desk. An old one, from years ago. It was the letter she wrote to herself the day after the media frenzy died down. It read, "You were kind before they noticed. Stay kind when they forget." The boy read it twice, didn't speak, just nodded, and left the room, a little straighter, a little taller. No one else knew. But that's the thing with kindness. It doesn't need an audience. It needs a moment and someone brave enough to take it. So, here's where the story fades. Not with fireworks, not with applause, but with one last image. A woman walking past a bench, a plane taking off, a wind that carries nothing but silence. And maybe a question. What if it were you? What if the man with the melted face sat next to you? What if the seat beside you held the power to change someone's day or life? Would you notice? Would you hesitate? Would you stand? Would you give up your seat if no one ever knew you did? If you've ever done something kind in silence, tell us, just once. Let their story be remembered. And if this made you feel something, share it with someone who still believes quiet things matter. Subscribe to Revenge with Smile, where power doesn't shout. It whispers.